when I was journeying with two students, so he's five, right? But two was my limit, and at two students, I crashed my car. Hello, my name is Yen Ping,
And I'm Adriel.
and this is the Teo-logy podcast. So in one of the previous episodes, I shared a little bit about my mental health experience. And we thought that today we'll expand that topic a bit more because it's such a big and important topic. And we'll share a little bit about our journeying with friends with mental health and some of the things that we learned from that.
Yeah. And I feel, as cliche as it sounds, I think it is a very important aspect that we need to look into today. Because what I feel is there is a growing sense of awareness of this thing called mental health, but the wisdom to navigate it is still something that is in the works. Yeah. And so I think today we're just going to share how we go through it and what our insights. So maybe a quick disclaimer, whatever we share, this is not medical or professional advice.
Yeah, we're not certified counselors or whatever, but I think why we also want to share it despite not being experts is just to show that, as normal people, you journey with it daily and you journey with friends. So how do you deal with it?
And we hope to provide a more down-to-earth, not so lofty guide.
More
Perhaps.
layman.
Yeah, more layman. So I think perhaps what we want to do is we provide a definition of what mental illness is, right?
Yeah, before we start talking about it.
Correct. To give you the brief. What you understand, so when you use the word illness, it is the same as what you call a physical illness. When you cough, right? You have phlegm and all that, and you need to seek a doctor's help to get your medication, but also you need to come home and you stop taking ice and you rest, stuff like that. So mental illness is also something with the body. It is malfunctioning, but it is usually in the context of emotions, thought patterns, in a way that that is a bit more extreme, that creates a sense of stress within the mental state. And a quick distinction between mental illness and mental disorder. So when the word disorder is put, it has come to a point where it totally disrupts your daily functioning, that you really cannot function in a way that things cannot move forward, you cannot progress, and you really need to seek intentional medical help. And usually mental disorder, when properly diagnosed, has aspects of where it is not just a circumstantial event, it is also it's psychosomatic lah. Meaning the body reaction affects the mind, affects how you think, the whole body is affected that way. So a mental disorder is like, in my head, I will word it this way, it's like, so mental illness is you cough, mental disorder is like you cough and you cough blood and you cannot eat on because your throat is so painful, and you need to take a notch higher in how you seek help. So that's so in brief succession. So mental illness, when we talk about mental illness, it is the kind of disruption that happens in your emotions, in your thinking for whatever reasons. Yeah.
Yep. I think I just want to add that all of us go through a spectrum of, how we bounce up and down in our mental health. There are days when we're more sad, or there are circumstances that make us more anxious. But like what Adriel says, when you come to a point where you can't bounce back and it affects how you function, that's when, it starts being termed as a disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it does sound like you have a very technical definition, or you seem like you have thought through this for quite a bit. So maybe we'll share also, when was your first encounter with anything, the term mental health?
I think the first encounter was through my degree. I'm a psychology graduate. So obviously, when you hear psychology, it is one of the many places where mental health and disorders are highly discussed in the whole setting lah. Sure, and I was there for my 3 years plus, and these topics will come out on a daily basis. So yeah, that was my first encounter. Well, what about you?
Um, I think now looking back, I had friends or family who were going through different things, but when we actually talked about it, would be uni, when I had a friend who was going through clinical depression, and I think back then it was a lot easier. When you're in university, there are services. The mental health support is great. Church was also very supportive. So in a sense, we as friends kind of knew what to do, or more like what we didn't need to do. So what we basically just did was, this friend was half Japanese and my roommate is Japanese. So we just, invited her over for regular hangouts, and make Japanese curry. They'll cook for me and watch things like Princess Mononoke, just having a sense of community. So that was all we did.
Wait, so when you said exposed, like did this particular individual said I have clinical
Yeah,
depression,
yeah.
and you let you know lah.
Yeah.
I mean, just a quick thought process. So being your first time being exposed, right? And when you heard that word, what was your first reaction, emotional reaction that you noticed, or what? Were you panicky? Were you like, oh my goodness?
Yeah, so that was what made me think like, oh, actually we were pretty chill about it. And we were just like, oh, okay, we'll spend time and hang out. But that made me think, oh, it's because I knew that she already had support and help from a medical perspective, from counselors. So it was almost like, okay, there's someone doing what needs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So based on that, of course, many years have passed since our exposures, right? And on and off, we journey with friends with mental health issues. So maybe we'll go into sharing a little bit about how do you journey with friends with mental health?
Yeah, I think how I would like to start first is to address, I think almost probably every mental health podcast have mentioned this, the idea of how do you word it when you want to make something look so bad? You antagonize it, is it? You make it look, what's that word?
Or stereotype?
No. Stigmatize. Yeah, so there is this idea of stigmatization happening in the world of mental illness, simply because of the failure to have a distinction between mental illness and mental disorders. And so many people fail to have the proper initial emotional response when someone is struggling. Yeah. So if like someone is having a flu, I just hand him a tissue and to blow his nose. I don't overreact. Oh my goodness, have you seen a doctor? Oh no, this is so bad. I mean, I will eventually say, have you seen a doctor? But I see him. Sorry, that was a mosquito. Uh, yeah, I see him. Blowing his nose. I'm just, oh no, what, careful lah. You want some warm water? So that's how I approach. Just acknowledging that he is not fully well, he needs rest or somehow lah. So how I journey is I liken it to an analogy of I am a airport officer, where I have this airport where people come and fly in with their baggages. And all I do is I ask them to bring in the scanner, put all in the scanner, and I check through their baggage. I do a check-in for them. And I just see the stuff and I point out, oh, this is a bit too dangerous, or oh wow, this is interesting. Why are you bringing this here? And then they will explain to me. And then once the check-in is done, I rearrange. I give them some pointers. Be careful, don't bring all the water in and all that. They fly, and then I finish their check-in, and they fly to the next destination until they fly to my airport again. So I don't seek to have to fix them, but what I do is I check in their baggages. Some more heavy than others, some carry light, but check-ins are very good to help organize and just remind them that there's something that they carry. Yeah, so that's how I journey. Yeah.
I like the analogy of check-in because it feels like almost like a temporal thing. You're not there, forever. And it is a touch point, right? A touch base
Yeah.
with friends. But also the point about airport is there are times when people will actually say, "Oh, you're not allowed to bring this past, this thing." Is that something that you do?
Yeah. And I think this you might see this coming, right? So an airport, you're not allowed to bring certain chemicals, certain weapons, for they may be important to you for some reason. As a whole, the officer has identified that will potentially bring harm to others. And as much as you promise me you will not bring harm, and not that I don't want to believe you, the fact that it's with you creates the potential, and the job of the officer is to make sure that potential is diminished. And so, yes, there are moments when I have to, for the sake of the individual's health or not, I'll say this thing that everyone's doing, I just want to pinpoint that and hold it captive, and talk about this before you can move on to the next. And I'm not gonna promise to resolve it, right? But I will say, look, as if they want to rebel and choose to fly to another airport, I will not stop them. But if they want to go through my customs, I will have to say this. I have to circle this cannot be. So yes, it has happened before. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll share how I journey with friends. So, I think a lot of it is just listening. But active listening in the sense that you help people sort their thoughts, right? So you try to pick up key terms that they bring up, and then you prod a bit further. Oh, you mentioned this. What do you mean by that? Can I understand a bit more? And somehow in the process, it does help them realize certain things that they say, or yeah, it just helps them organize their thoughts. And sometimes I might even say like, oh, this is how you are thinking. But at the same time, because I'm not a professional, right? So I think how I see my role is a lot of spending time, just offering time to people, and also helping them to acknowledge or just be aware. So that involves normalizing a lot of conversations. So sharing things like, oh, women are twice more likely to have anxiety than men, or even, yeah, you can take pills and they're helpful, but it's also beneficial if you have counseling and you have a community to journey with you. And one of the things that I did last time, especially with students, was if I would offer, if you feel that it's helpful, and you feel like it's helpful to have someone to go along, I can go along with you for your first session for counseling. And some students don't need it. They rather not have you there, right? But some students do take it up. So, yeah, just kind of being there and supporting along the journey so that you don't feel so alone.
Yeah, so you mentioned active listening, right? And in just doing that, you create a sense of presence. And it's not by presence like physically I'm here, but the fact that I'm intentionally here for you to hear you out. But could you like perhaps give an idea to the hearers, like how would active listening look like rather than just paying attention and pointing outwards? Do you have a different way to angle it?
Mm,
Because oh yeah, active listening. Oh, I'm hearing this word active listening.
yeah.
Yeah. So to it may be reinterpreted differently. But active listening is, do I memorize every word that comes out from my mouth, or that kind of thing?
No, but more of like just picking up key terms. So if someone says like, oh, I feel very tired today, then I might go like, oh, what makes you say that, or why do you feel tired? And they could very easily go, oh, I didn't sleep, I didn't get enough sleep last night. I was watching football, and that's a physical tired, right? But sometimes they might go, I have a lot on my mind. So that kind of helps you prod. And even if someone says like, I was up all night, then you can again prod further, why were you up all night? And sometimes the why just stops there, and like, oh, okay, that explains it. But sometimes when someone says something, it makes you feel like, oh, okay, I think there's another reason behind it.
So in short, actually, active listening is the kind where I am listening to be able to prod further. Yeah, right? Yeah. And sometimes it's as simple as asking why, which I think many people just forget to do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but also I think sometimes why can feel very intrusive. So um it could also be like, oh, just help me understand what do you mean by that.
It's also rephrasing how you use the word why lah.
Yeah. Or like if you're working with younger kids, then sometimes you make it simpler, right? So sometimes giving them sentence stems like, oh, I feel, or I want, or I hope. And then you ask them like, oh, what will you fill that up with? Or even like just showing them pictures, getting them to point like, oh, which one do you feel the most with the image? So yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, the way I rephrase certain things would be like, I'll say, uh, is it okay for me to ask a little bit further? Or I heard this and it intrigued me. Are you okay to elaborate? Actually, there are different ways of just asking why. Actually, lah.
Yeah, yeah.
I get it how why can be like. I'm thinking of the worst way tone is almost accusatory. Oh,
Why?
why? Huh? Come here, come
It's
here, come
like, why you
here.
want to know so much?
Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that also leads us to the what happens if people don't want you to tell so much, right? Or where do you stop, right? But on that note, also, maybe I'll ask, is there a limit to, because it takes energy, right, to like focus and
Yeah.
listen actively? Is there a limit to the number of people that you can journey with at one time?
Yes. Definitely.
Or what has been the max for you so far?
Okay, so when you say journey with the criteria is they have mental illness lah, right? They're struggling in one area or another, be it anxiety, they're anxious for something or they worry about something, all that lah. I think just a quick another disclaimer, right? When I give this answer, it is not by far a metric for you to measure yourself how you are journeying with your friends. I'm someone with a very high energy capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yes.
yes, yeah. And so, but it comes with my own weakness because of the high energy capacity, I always think I can continue on. And then when I crash, I really crash. I have no linear going down graph. It's just boom, boom, it just fall. But I think my limit, looking back on my past 2 years, before moving to Johor, 4 to 5, yeah,
At one go.
at one go. But I would definitely not recommend that number at all. Yeah.
And what kind of frequency is that 5?
Yes. So to make that 5 sustainable, obviously I have one who will message me every single day. And again to clarify lah, the person who messages me every single day doesn't mean that they have a disorder. It just means that somehow they are flying into my airport often, and they need a different style of check-in. And usually it's decision making, all that. Then there's one is eventful where they come in once every 3 months. There's also once every 6 months. Yeah, and because of that, I'm able to space out because I think one maximum a week. I think for me two is good
meets.
to meet. Three is doable at the cost of my focus. Yeah, I'll put it that way. So 2 a week to just sit down, and 1 hour is enough to drain you. And it all depends on how intentional you ask your questions. So out of the 5, maybe I will spread out. Some are once every 6 months. They need that big check-ins because they're saving all the information and their own reflections to share with me. Yeah, and some come to a point where they're not really they're not mentally ill, but they recognize the higher susceptibility to fall into this. So they quickly check in with me to just have
Before-
certain signpostings
Yeah.
to just move on to the next step.
Yeah.
So that's how I'll respond to your question. What about you?
Yeah. Just before I answer, to pick up on that also, that's why we talk about mental health versus mental disorder, right? So
Yeah.
address your mental health before it becomes a disorder. That's also a good thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it has come to a point where they do not know what they do not know. So, which is totally fine and normal. If someone is struggling, is mentally ill, they might not know it. They might be high functioning and still bulldozing their way through. It requires an outer party to just say, "Oh, hey, I noticed this. Do you notice this as well?" And that's how you get conversations going. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, so for me, I learned it the very hard way. When Edro talked about, when you meet people at different frequencies, yes, the meets can take energy, but I realized what happens to me is especially in the past, I wasn't very good at compartmentalizing. So I might have met you, say 1 month ago, but it doesn't mean I stopped thinking about you. So in that sense, it's not so much about frequency, but about mental space. And I remember a time very early in my teaching days when I was journeying with two students. So he's 5, right? But 2 was my limit. And at 2 students, I crashed my car. Because that's how, occupied I was. Yeah, it was quite a bad crash, but came out, thank God, alive. Car was written off, but I was alive.
I mean, would you say in a sense, as you journey with those two somehow managed to find their way into your baggage?
Yeah.
Yeah. Until it was heavy to even drive your car to focus.
Yeah, like I took their baggage along with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I learned a lot from that incident. I learned this thing called boundaries, right? So
yes, yeah.
and how to compartmentalize is recognizing that number 1, you're not the savior, and number 2, being okay if your friend is not okay. Like, if my friend jumps off a building and maybe that friend called me and I didn't pick up the call, it's fine. It's not on me. It's my friend jumped off the building.
So it's like nonen an gencana, tega gencana.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's when I learned boundaries, and learning how to communicate that to my friend also, right? So being able to say, I want to be there for you, but I might not be there for you all the time. And I will reply or respond when I can. So they also have the expectation that, yes, I really want to help, but not to latch on me, or use me as the sole, survival rope.
If I may add on that, I think that was a very good point to slide in. And so for me, the kind of boundaries that I draw is where I have to remind them, if you're checking in with me, I'm not your doctor. Yeah, I'm journeying with you. Okay, I'm opening the baggage with you. And so I will let them know that, hey, you're not the only one. I have also a life. I have also a wife. Yeah, and which if I were to have to make a choice, I choose my wife lah. However, I do affirm and assure them, if they would still like to have me journey with them, I'll say, this is my time for you. Maybe once every month, for this 1 hour. And if you think the check-in is worth you holding on for 1 hour, then I will dedicate that 1 hour to you. You have my word. And that's how I draw my boundary, by communicating in a positive sense, actually. Rather than say, it's my time, you too bad, I'm not your savior kind of thing. I mean, it's true, but to help them see that, hey, of course I am for you, but I am only human. Yeah.
Yeah, which I realize, of course, one is boundaries, right? But to be able to have boundaries, it also affects your lens on how you view mental health. If I can't say my friend, why am I there in the first place, right? So kind of like your framework for mental health. And maybe that will be how we end, like to share our framework of how we view journeying with friends with mental health. So I can start. We had a psychologist friend, mentor that we look up to, and she introduced this concept by Michael Slater called the stretcher bearer, and it came from the story of when Jesus healed the Paralympic. Is it called Paralympic? Yeah, the guy who basically he couldn't walk. He was bedridden all the time, and he had 4 friends who, because he couldn't go to Jesus, right? But he had 4 friends who were willing to bring him to Jesus. So they put him on a stretcher, hence the word stretcher bearer, and they bore him to Jesus, and Jesus did the healing. The friends didn't do anything. They just lowered him down, right? And that concept is very helpful for me because number one, it's acknowledging that you are not the savior or you're not the healer. Only Jesus can heal. But number two, you have a role to play. You can help to carry your friend some burdens. And also number 3, you can't carry him alone. He's heavy, right? Yeah. So it took 4 people to carry one guy. And that's a helpful model where, a couple of friends sort of tag team or even spend time together to just support one friend. And, today it might be you on the stretcher, tomorrow it might be me, and we just take turns. Yeah.
I think the beautiful thing about the narrative that you shared is actually, think about it, right? As they carry their friends, the other thing is they saw the urgency that there's no one else at that time who could heal their friend other than Jesus. And they were willing to tear down the roof just to get. And I'm wondering whether today's people, day and age, they have that same urgency when they see someone struggling. Yeah. Yeah. So stretcher bearer, that's your framework.
Yep.
Yeah. So my turn?
Yep.
Yeah. I think by now you will probably catch on that we are coming from a very biblical mindset. We're both Christians. And I think this was been shared before in the previous episodes, how one of our views is because everyone is created in the image of God, that itself creates a reality that you have intricate value and worth regardless of your status, regardless of the skills you bring to the table. Just by sheer existing, you have value, and that is enough cause and clause for us to respond to you to help. Yeah, whether regardless of whatever economic status you're at. And so for me, it is those who have heard me say this is probably overused, but my view, and finally I got this term from the same mental health mentor that we both had back in our previous jobs. And it is this term called redemptive space. However, when the word came up, I really fell in love with the word because the mental health lingo concerning what space to provide has always been safe space. Yeah. Nothing wrong with the term, by the way. However, what you can see is the potentiality of how that word can be abused, by which you want to make me safe doesn't mean I give you a space to work out your issues, but rather it's a safe space means I can be whoever I want to be, and I can. You cannot tell me what to do. If you tell me who I need to be, whether right or wrong, it's not safe for me anymore. So my lens is redemptive space. I adapted that idea and I found I'm not what's the word, Bible cherry picking a verse, but rather when you look at John 4, Jesus' encounter with the Samaritan woman, how this Samaritan woman is a mess, full of sinfulness, and her safe space at 12 p.m. was being at the well just to quench her thirst. Jesus goes to that safe space and literally destroys her safe space by reminding her about the one thing she doesn't want to be reminded about, her 5 husbands, but offered her something better, which is himself as the one who redeems her and doesn't reject her and creates a redemptive space. So for me, my lens is whoever comes into my airport, I will earnestly, firmly, and this doesn't need to work with everyone, and gently point out the issues to say, hey, I see this, but I do not reject you, I do not cast you aside, but I do want to reveal to you who Jesus is in light of this issue. And hopefully, if there is enough humility and conviction that they are willing to let go of this safe space to receive Jesus and make it a redemptive space for them. Yeah, so that was a bit lengthy, right? But I had to give you this context. When I journey with someone, it is in the mind of redemptive space. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if listeners also have a lens in which you view mental health or certain best practices, if you want to call that, in approaching or journeying with friends with mental health. Feel free to share as we put out the podcast put in the comments, or even just drop us a message.
Yeah, so keep in mind, we are only sharing our journey, and it's a perspective of two with the help of few who have journeyed with us, and what we have seen. So we want to make a clear statement that obviously this is not something that will work 100% all the time. Yeah.
Again, we're not experts, right? We're not
Correct.
certified or whatever.
And we haven't seen the wide range of different circumstances. We have met people with abuse, we have met people with breakups, and the list goes on. But it really takes a lot of discernment, patience, and wisdom to look through each individual lah. And so maybe I just close this up, right? I think what we have discussed today is to recognize, as cliche as it is, there is a distinction between mental illness and mental disorder, and we shouldn't stigmatize this all. But as you have heard how we shared, when someone comes with an issue, you just take it as part and parcel of a broken, fallen world, but someone to journey with, and how we journey with is that of just active listening and just checking in their baggages, just being there and being present intentionally. And our lens by which we see it is, for her, it is the model of a stretcher bearer where you don't do it alone, and you're carrying a friend. But at the end of the day, you're carrying your friend to someone who can save. And for me, is creating a space that is greater than a safe space, but you redeem the person, which means I see you, I know this is not who you need to be, where all you are, and we would like to redeem you to be who you need to be. Yeah. And I think what we are offering here is a more community model concept of journeying with mental illness. And when I say this, we are not disregarding the clinical methods. It is, I think I mentioned this earlier, it is like if I am sick, I go to see the doctor for the pills with the right diagnosis. Doesn't mean I go back home.
Yeah, like your mom can't help you cook porridge.
Correct. So the doctor will be like, okay, you take these antibiotics, but auntie, for your son, make sure he doesn't eat cold drinks or da. So then the remaining 80% of the healing process goes to the whole community that is with the particular person who is sick. So it is the same with mental illness, by the way. Yeah. And so I think that's it for now.
This is the Teo-logy podcast.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.